Hey, welcome back. You know, sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the kingpin, or the enforcer, or the smuggler. Sometimes it's the one holding the badge, the one you're supposed to trust. I'm Ibnul J. Farabi, and this is Underworld Kings, the rise and fall from Light Not Studios. And today's story is a jaw-dropper of betrayal that almost brought down the most famous drug case in American history. Picture this: New York City, early 1970s. The French Connection case was the stuff of legend. Federal agents and NYPD detectives had just pulled off the largest heroin seizure in the world at that time. Nearly 100 pounds of pure, street-ready heroin, with a street value in the tens of millions. It was a career-making bust. The evidence was locked away in a secure police vault. The bad guys were going away for a long, long time. The case was airtight, until it wasn't, because someone, from the inside, decided to steal it all. This is the story of the cop who stole the heroin, and his name was Detective William Bill King. To understand the sheer audacity of this, you have to understand the environment. The NYPD in the 70s was a different world. Corruption scandals were bubbling under the surface, and the French Connection heroin itself? It was almost a mythical object, a trophy. Over 200 pounds of it had been seized from a car in 1962. By 1972, after a decade of trials and appeals, about 100 pounds of it remained, stored in the NYPD's property clerk's office. It was supposed to be under lock and key, guarded. But for a detective like Bill King, it was a temptation sitting in plain sight. King wasn't some rookie. He was a decorated, veteran detective, a member of the NYPD's elite Special Investigating Unit. He knew the system, he knew the procedures, and most importantly, he knew the vulnerabilities. The story goes that he simply walked into the property office, showed his badge, signed out the evidence using fake names and case numbers, and walked out with it. Not once, not twice, but over and over again. He replaced the pure heroin with baking soda or flour, carefully resealing the packages so they looked untouched. It was a heist carried out in broad daylight by the man sworn to protect the evidence. Now, you might be thinking, how could this possibly go unnoticed? And that's the most terrifying part. It went on for months. The system was that broken. The trust was that implicit. No one double-checked the signature of a decorated detective. No one weighed the evidence again. The heroin, this cornerstone of the biggest narcotics case ever, was just sitting there, slowly being replaced by something you could buy at the grocery store. King and his partners, because he didn't work alone, were funneling this incredibly pure heroin back onto the streets of New York. The very streets they were supposed to be cleaning up. The irony is so dark it's almost Shakespearean. The unraveling began, as it often does, with a tip. Not from within the NYPD, but from the French authorities. They had informants who were hearing about incredibly pure French Connection heroin hitting the streets again. That was impossible. All of it was supposed to be in custody. Suspicion slowly turned inward, a horrible, creeping realization. An audit was ordered. And when they finally opened those evidence packages, they found the pathetic truth: bags of white powder that certainly wasn't heroin. The investigation that followed was a nightmare for the NYPD's reputation. It was a house of cards. They tracked it back to King and his crew. The motive? Greed, plain and simple, but also a sense of entitlement, a belief that the rules didn't apply to them. They were the kings of their own little underworld, operating right inside the palace walls. King was eventually convicted, along with others. He was sentenced to life in prison, though he would be paroled after about 2 decades. But the damage was far deeper than the stolen drugs. Think about the thousands of cases that evidence had touched. Convictions were now thrown into question. The integrity of the entire NYPD evidence system was shattered. The French Connection, this shining example of police work, was now permanently tainted by one of the most brazen acts of police corruption in history. The heroes of the story were suddenly part of a much darker, more complicated narrative. Sitting here in New York, all these decades later, I think about that vault. I'm an engineer by training, and I think about systems. You design a system to be robust, with checks and balances. But you also have to account for the human element, the single point of failure that no technical safeguard can ever fully control. The NYPD's evidence system had a fatal flaw. It was built on blind trust in the badge. Bill King exploited that flaw with chilling precision. It's a reminder that the most secure lock in the world is useless if you hand the key to the wrong person. It also makes you wonder about legacy. The detectives who worked the original French Connection case, their monumental effort, their dedication, it's all overshadowed now by this scandal. Their rise is forever linked to this fall. The kingpins they took down probably got a grim laugh out of it. The system corrupted itself from within. That's the real tragedy of this story. It wasn't just a theft. It was a profound betrayal of public trust. It told every citizen that the evidence against criminals could be tampered with. It told every honest cop that their work could be undone by the guy at the next desk. It created a cynicism that law enforcement is still, in some ways, battling today. So what's the takeaway from this dizzying fall from grace? For me, it's that power without oversight is a recipe for disaster. It doesn't matter if that power is on the streets or behind a badge. The moment someone believes they are beyond scrutiny, they become a danger to everything they're supposed to protect. The French Connection heroin was a symbol of victory until a detective saw it not as evidence, but as opportunity. And in doing so, he wrote one of the most shameful chapters in police history. Thanks for listening to this deep dive into a true crime story that still echoes today. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please share this episode with a friend. For more stories of the rise and catastrophic fall of history's most intriguing underworld kings, make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. This is Ibnul J. Farabi for Light Not Studios. Until next time, stay curious.